Hello, welcome to Startup Navigator's Facebook Live series. That's right, we're live. My name's Brian Goldberg. I'm a trademark attorney, and today we're going to speak about protecting your brand name. That's right, protecting your brand name as a trademark in Australia and internationally. So let's get started. Often the first thing startups do or businesses do is think, oh, I might have a business opportunity, whether it's a new product or service. So I'm going to start and I'm going to work with a name that I'm going to use. So they create a name. The name could be simple, the name could be their name, the name could be a common name, descriptive name, and they immediately try to find a domain name and start using it, which in theory, the fast pace is good. However, the worst case scenario is that you invest time, money and effort in building the brand to receive a nasty letter telling you, stop, you can't use the brand anymore, you're infringing, and what's worse, pay us all the damages. So I'm here to try to guide you on how to build a good foundation for your brand and branding by focusing on the trademarks. Okay, so now you come up with a name. Let's start by that. And we're starting in Australia, but you have plans to go internationally. So we need to consider what type of name is good. Let me start by giving you a definition of what a trademark is. A trademark can be distinctive, so it's a distinctive name, not descriptive. And with a bit of luck, no one else has registered it or in fact using it for similar goods and services. That's right. Brands can exist, but not for the same goods and services unless, of course, you're famous, and then you get rights across all goods and services. So if your name needs to be distinctive, how distinctive does it need to be? Well, if I'm branding pull-up nappies, I can't call them pull-ups. I can call them something else, but not pull-up nappies, because my competitor should be allowed to describe their product as pull-up nappies. So you'll need to come up with a more creative name than pull-ups for pull-up nappies. And that's the type of example that's too descriptive. If I've got the best vacuum cleaner and I call it fastest vacuum, well, firstly, it needs to be. And secondly, my competitor should be allowed to call theirs a fast vacuum. So that's the idea of coming up with a more distinctive brand name. And then that makes everything easier from a trademark perspective. I do it over a coffee. Some people have a glass of wine. Some need to sleep on it. Others pay expensive marketing designers to come up with their brand. Whatever it takes, the more distinctive, the better from a trademark perspective. However, we obviously understand that you also want the market to understand what you're doing. So my specific tip when selecting a new brand name, in fact, the best trademarks that I love when clients come to me are trademarks that connotate the meaning of what they're trying to achieve or their value proposition, yet it's not an exact description of the product. And they're the best type of brand names in my view, because they're easily trademarkable from my perspective, which means more cost effective and better branding. And the end consumers, whether businesses or customers, end customers, they understand what your product's about through the connotative meaning. So that's my tip of what makes the best brand name. Okay, so then we move on and say a trademark can be a word, it can also be a slogan, and it can also be a logo or a combination of all three. And probably the most famous is Nike. Nike, the word, is a brand name, So that's a word mark. The just do it aspect is a slogan. And the famous swish is the logo. So they have multiple trademark applications protected worldwide. Nike on its own, Nike Just Do It, Nike Just Do It Swish, Just Do It on its own, Swish on its own, etc. A combination of the word, slogan, and logo. The advantage of getting the word alone means you can potentially use different logos or different slogans as your brand evolves, and you're not stuck to it. However, having a powerful slogan can be a winning branding activity as well. So it's up to you how many facets of a trademark you'd like to register, noting that each logo, slogan, or word is considered a different application and hence duplicating the costs, which may be unavoidable, or we stick to the master brand and just try to capture the word version of your brand. Okay, so that's the name. But a trademark needs to be associated with goods and services. So what are you selling under your brand name? Are you selling services, business services, consulting services? Are you selling construction services? Are you an app designer? Are you selling food, coffee? So your brand trademark needs to be filed in classes according to what you are going to sell and offer under the brand. Each class is an additional cost. And in Australia, you need some good faith that you will be using the brand in those classes. When I get internationally in a moment, in the US, they're very strict on usage. So you can only protect your brand for goods and services that you are using in the marketplace, and we need to sign declarations. So I don't mind if you limit your trademark to what you're using. We can go a bit broader, but ultimately we want to protect it for what you're using it for. And that gives us a stronger trademark anyway. Okay, so we've got the brand, whether it's a trademark, logo or slogan, a word version. We've got the goods and services that you're offering under your brand. And now we need to file. The filing process can be relatively straightforward. Before we do that, we want to know who owns the trademark. Okay, so if we started one today and you haven't set up your company and you've just thought of a great name, sure, file it under your own name, that's fine. Your accountants would probably prefer it under a company name. In the long run, that seems to be better as long as you control the company. But we can always move it across to a company if you own the name and then you're part of the company. We just need to do proper documentation. So if you own it, you need an address as well. The address is a bit obsolete these days. Not much goes there. Most gets emailed to myself as a trademark attorney. So an address could be anything, even a PO box. So we've got a company or an individual and an address, and that's all you need. And then we file it. In Australia, there's a fast track system. So within 10 days, which is very important for startups, 10 days is a long time to hold an idea. Within 10 days, we can file and receive a report from IP Australia as to the likelihood of success. And that's very good. That's a real advantage, and it is only in Australia, that fast track system, because we want to know what are the chances of success. Now, ultimately, the trademark will take 7 months. It's a long time for the startup world, probably longer than a lot of startups exist for, but it takes 7 months to actually get the certificate of registration. But within 10 days, we can find out the likelihood of success. And that is important because you're going to start investing in it. You're going to get the right domain names. You want to get the designer, graphic designer, to pay them once, not have them change it because your name has to change. So that gives us a good indication. And from there, away you go. Start using the name. You can put a TM symbol next to the name until it's registered. Then we put an R symbol. And hopefully your brand's there. In fact, by capturing and protecting your brand as a trademark, the aim then is everything else becomes more cost effective because you're not changing your brand, you're not changing your logo, and you're not changing your slogan. And it builds consistency and it builds good branding in the marketplace. So it all works well from a branding, marketing perspective to secure a trademark. So the next step is you're online, you're digital, you're international, you're making it out of China, selling it to the world, you're on Amazon. And you think, okay, well, now I need to protect it internationally. How do I do that? Well, it's not easy and it can be expensive, but there are systems in place. And in fact, I just got back from my international trademark conference in Seattle, which was great fun to see all the other trademark attorneys from around the world. And the more you know about each country's different focus, the more you need people on the ground in each country to assist us. And so we would use my trademark associates in US, Europe, pick a country. I've got friends in a lot of countries now, India. We would use them on the ground to assist us filing locally, wherever your market may be. The difference between Australia and a lot of international markets is that in Australia, you have some rights when you use the mark. So it's first to use. Whereas internationally, in most jurisdictions, it's a first to file that owns the mark. And this has been, in particular, very tricky and somewhat detrimental to a lot of Australian businesses when it comes to China and Hong Kong, who are first to file markets. So if they file it first, there's not much you can do, even though it might be your brand. So the aim is file your trademark proactively in jurisdictions where you operate, whether it's manufacture or you sell, whether it's USA, Europe. Speaking of Europe at the moment, England, UK, Great Britain is part of Europe from a trademark perspective. This may change. So ask the question if you're going to UK only or to UK and Europe, is that the market? Is UK the market, or is it Europe, or both? And we may need to adjust it depending what happens with Brexit. Otherwise, Europe is the only region we can protect your brand in. It's 27 countries. Every other country, USA, Canada, etc., is an independent filing. So there is one more advantage in filing in Australia, and that will give us 6-month priority period. So if we file today, we have 6 months to file internationally and claim today's date. So we've got a buffer. We can go overseas, we can advertise overseas, we can market, and within 6 months, even though we're exposed to the brand, we can reclaim today's date. And that's a good advantage for having a good base application. In Australia, we can have a base application. So that brings us to which countries are popular. Well, in the startup world, there's no doubt the USA is popular. And the USA is very popular for brands, and they love their brands. And there's not a startup incubator in the US without a splash screen of every brand that's come through there. And it's all about branding. It's all about trademarking, and they get it and they love it. They love creating new trademarks and brands, and sometimes they just get investment because their name is so cool. And that's a big thing in the US, not just Silicon Valley. Mind you, there's a lot of startup centres happening throughout the US. Another popular one for us is the UK. The UK is a popular market because we've got heritage there. So protecting your mark in the UK is a common direction. From a perspective of a tip that I've been given through experience and bad stories from Australian producers, manufacturers, is that if you are making anything in China, or if you are wanting to now sell in China, then regardless of the status of their legal system, filing is important. In fact, I view it as an insurance policy. By filing in China, at least you've got something filed. If you don't, there are many risks. If you do, we can't guarantee that we can perfectly enforce it, but at least we've got something, some paperwork. So China and Hong Kong are something that should be done straight away if you've got any business there whatsoever. Otherwise, it's as you grow. Do you want to be proactive, or do you wait for critical sales thresholds before you act? The choice is yours. The risk increases as your brand's exposed. However, we understand budgets, and even the biggest companies in the world have a budget and need to sign off on which countries they seek to protect their brands in. So that's a summary of how to protect your brands. Startups starting locally here in Melbourne, Australia, still have global reach. You're online, you're exposed. Not only that, you've got potential customers everywhere, which is an exciting time to be a startup and an emerging business, because before you know it, you could be, your number one market might be Poland, Europe. Who knows? Once you get your product or service on the market, online, and do digital marketing, you could be anywhere. But be prepared, get the foundation in place, and trademarks are important. So once again, thank you, Startup Navigators Facebook Live series, for allowing me to share an insight into trademarks and protecting your brands. It's been great, and thank you very much. Signing off.